Hello, this is Jason Titcomb with LMGI, continuing the SolidEdge Fundamentals course. We're going to talk now about face relates. So face relates are a way to control the design intent of your model. They are located right up here in the face relate group. You'll have them in assembly as well, so you can apply them to individual parts from the assembly environment very conveniently. Some of these are easy to understand. Coplanar is one that's easy. Concentric, I think, is quite easy. Symmetry, maybe a little tricky. Offset can get a little tricky. Parallel, we'll look at some of these. Let's look at coplanar. Now, there are actually two workflows. I tend to start with nothing selected and then start the command, though be aware if you have something selected, or even if I picked more than one thing and then I started the command, it will consider that to be the first stage of selection for that. So it's up to you, but be aware. If I do so, I do a coplanar. Now, a lot of these face relates, most of them will have a persist button, so that is there. We'll make it persistent. So if you make something coplanar, it will kind of always persist it until someone deletes or overrides that. And this drop list is actually really important to keep an eye on. It is sticky, so if you change it, it will remember from day to day what you did. So when you're picking multiple faces, so if you pick 3 faces as the first step and then you accept and then you pick a target face, it will take all 3 faces in the case of multiple align and align it to the target, versus single align, it will only take the first face and then the subsequent faces will be relative to it. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say I pick this face first and then this face, and I can tell right away because I have the mixed color green. The light green is the seed face. The dark greens are just going to come along for the ride, and so that I accept the first step of the moving faces, and then you can click the target. So you see this face was the seed face, that became aligned, but these stayed relative to where they were relative to the seed face. And if you even change that right here, you'll see now they all are aligned. And if you turn on your live rules, they'll also engage. And so yes, they do come into play even when you're applying face relates. So be aware of that. Let's take a look at rigid set. So this is another one of your activities. I think they have you do, they might have you use a ground, which is kind of, notice there's very little to this command bar. It's kind of like just putting a nail in that face. That won't move at all. If you want, and I don't think we really need it in this case. And again, if you pre-selected and then you hit the ground command secondarily, you could work that way too. So you see I've grounded a couple of faces. Then they're going to do something kind of unusual here that's not really required. They're going to just kind of make things interesting by having you make a copy and detach. Actually, I don't think you even need to detach, but they're going to have you make a, you're going to drop this steering wheel here, and we're going to make a, a 10 degree, I guess it was, copy. It's just a little surface. We're going to kind of just use it as a tool. Imagine we want this face to be coplanar, but all the other sort of nearby faces we want them to be relative to that floor. Now you could use a rigid set, and you could grab those faces, and those would all now move as a unit all the time by default, unless you broke that that face relate. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do we're going to do coplanar, and we're going to just talk about that seed face again. I'm going to check my setting. I want to make sure it's set to single, so that I click my seed face, and then I continue to click the rest. Notice the difference in color. I right click to accept, and then I go to my target. And this is a nice feature. They preview if you like the blue. Blue is happy. That's solving successfully. Usually if you like what you see, you just right click in many commands. So that kind of made that situation the way we wanted, and we don't even need this little surface anymore. It was just there as a helper. And then coplanar axis is another. I actually don't think you'd end up in this scenario very often, but it is kind of nice to have a way to line up holes if they weren't originally lined up, if they were off some small amount. Let's say I move one hole in kind of manually where it should be, and then I want those others to be lined up with it. You just do aligned holes, I guess. They used to call it coplanar axis, didn't they? So you pick the first. Now remember, the first pick is important. The one you pick first. It's often used as a seed. And then I'm going to accept. And you have two options here. You can just pick something flat, and it will use a flat plane, or you can pick another point. So you see it picks up that vertex, and let's say those are a little bit skewed, so they would be lined up from the first hole to that vertex, or using a plane. And again, you would persist that if you wanted to, though I don't think you really need to with holes, because you'll notice then afterwards when you modify one hole, your aligned holes, formerly known as coplanar axis, you may see that verbiage somewhere every once in a while. They'll maintain alignment once they're created just naturally with your design intent. So that's a little bit of the activities that you'll do, not 100%. And then offset, I don't think we may or may not do an activity for offset. This is not one of their files out of the training set, but I thought I'd go over a little bit. Offset is kind of cool. Let's say it actually has 3 modes that it can work in, and to be honest with you, you're probably going to need to do a little self-study in the help. I think standard align is probably the most useful. So I click one face and I accept. I click another one and it's 20. So let's just leave it at 20 for now. We could probably push the symmetric button in, and I'm going to accept. I'm going to stay right in the command, and I'm going to click, right click, right click. So now I've kind of done 2, and I'm going to take and hit the select tool, so I'm completely out of that, and start again fresh, just so I can demonstrate something to you. And this slot now is actually the same width, but I'm just going to run the command again kind of independently. And now you'll notice here something a little unusual in the relationships group where your relates show up. This one is in a these two are grouped, and this one is separate because I ran the command again separately. So the behavior is this now. So if you click this face, or if you click one of these, you use the edit definition handle. I'm going to do a symmetric edit. So notice these 3 buttons. So select similar offsets. So these are the ones that are were done all at the same time, and you see those change together. And if I click the first button, it will be just that first element will move. But then the last button, it will actually go and find all the other faces that have that same value initially of 20 millimeters. So it goes and it seeks them out. It kind of searches the model. So that is a overview of face relates. We may cover some more a little bit later. That is the end of that activity.